My name is Emily Miller, 35 years old. I serve as the marketing director at the main company of Miller Holdings, being the daughter of the CEO of Miller Holdings. I married Jack, a colleague from the company, 2 years ago. We were supposed to be living happily, or so I thought. When I returned home early from a business trip, I found in the living room my husband and a woman I never wanted to see again, and even worse, a small new life cradled in her arms. "So, the baby is born." "What?" I said. "So, the baby is born, huh? Why would you?" How much more does this man need to mock me before he's satisfied? Just looking at him makes my skin crawl. I'm fed up. I'm going back to my parents' house. Well, then, here's the divorce papers. Pack your stuff and get out. What? You're going back to your parents' house, right? So, file the divorce papers as soon as possible. Joy is the only thing I can sense from my husband's face. He must be thinking, now my wife's gone, I can start a new life with her and the baby. He's the one who should be leaving. Unable to bear speaking to him anymore, I snatched the divorce papers off the table and stomped to my room. I packed only the necessary items in my suitcase, and without looking at my husband's face, I left the house. On my way, I stopped by my brother's house nearby and showed him the divorce papers. "Are you okay?" he asked, and after discussing a few things, I left his house. Then, I headed straight to the office and submitted the divorce papers. Just like that, my marriage was over. So that's it, I thought as I headed towards my parents' house. Feeling guilty, I entered my parents' home. Sure enough, my parents were shocked and then angry to see their daughter suddenly return home with a suitcase. "Use our lawyer too." "What?" "We'll settle this today." Saying so, my father started calling the lawyer. My ex-husband and I were colleagues. Originally, I had a long-time boyfriend, and as we got older, we talked about eventually spending our lives together. However, about 2.5 years ago, he was transferred overseas, and the long distance strained our relationship, resulting in him saying, "It's better for us to be apart for now." Naturally, I lost weight from heartbreak and became a wreck, worrying those around me. Still, I desperately kept up appearances, refusing to let my work suffer. My ex-husband was the one who worried about me more than anyone. "Had anything to eat?" "I'm not really hungry." "You might think you're not hungry, but your body probably needs food. How about eating this now?" Saying so, he would hand me a sandwich or some other simple meal for lunch, insisting I eat it right in front of him. "Are you finishing up for the day?" "Yeah, looks like I can leave early for once." "Then, have dinner with me." "What?" "It's lonely eating dinner alone as a guy. So today, you're joining me." He would say this, inviting me to dinner. My ex-husband and I weren't particularly close, just colleagues who would gather together when something came up. Still, his sudden concern was deeply appreciated by me. "I'm making you worry, aren't I?" "Huh?" Getting all torn up over a guy. And even without that, being a member of the Miller family makes people look at me differently. "Are you overthinking it?" "What?" "You're overthinking, Emily. Everyone gets hurt or feels sad, no matter who they are. And regarding work, you've been doing great on your own, not just because of your parents. In fact, I think you work harder because of them." "You really think so?" "I've always been watching you." "What?" "I've always liked you. I knew you had a boyfriend, so I thought I had to give up. But if you're okay with it, I'd like you to consider giving us a chance." Hearing his straightforward words, it was only a matter of time before my vulnerable heart was swayed. Things progressed quickly from there. Looking back, I must have been clinging to him, thinking I couldn't do without him when I was at my weakest. As if he was the only ally in the world, I started dating him, believing only his words, and got married within 6 months. We began our married life in a slightly larger condo that I had prepared to live in with my former boyfriend, into which my ex-husband moved. The fun times spent with someone else cheered me up. My work became more engaging, and I was even promoted to director. It was completely different from what I had envisioned in the past, but at that time, I was convinced that it was my form of happiness and lived each day accordingly. However, around that time, I gradually started feeling a sense of discomfort. Emily, there's a possibility of me being seconded. Seconded? To where? To a client that my colleague is mainly handling. I've been supporting it too, but the project's getting bigger, so they want me to work there directly. Indeed, my ex-husband had a long career in sales and was an excellent salesperson. The company has been helped countless times by him, and I'm sure he'll do a great job this time as well. However, for some reason, I felt uneasy about this sudden development. I heard that the colleague going with him is a female employee, and she herself found the client for the secondment. It was a company in northern Pennsylvania I've never heard of. I wondered why she was able to find and secure a new client there. Moreover, what use would a second-year female employee be to the client on a secondment? If even my husband was going, that would be a loss for our company too. He is one of our best salespeople, and with the amount of work he has, he shouldn't be on secondment. Didn't you have a big collaboration with a major client coming up? What's gonna happen with that? Yeah, I'll still be working on that. It'll put a burden on the team I'm working with, though. Even though it's a secondment, I've arranged to continue my current duties. What? Is there even a point to that? It's supposed to be a big project, right? My words made my ex-husband's expression darken. He looked annoyed and didn't hide his displeasure. Do you really need to say that much, Emily? Huh? Just like you have your job, I have mine. I think even if we're close, there are things you can and cannot say. Sorry, but to be honest, it's been bothering me. Going to northern Pennsylvania means you'll be staying there with her, right? Yeah, well. You're not gonna live together, right? Of course not, that won't happen. But it's gonna be an unfamiliar secondment, so I'll be supporting her. It's part of the job. When he says it's part of the job, I can't really say anything. Still, as someone with a trauma of being apart, a little reassurance would have been nice. Unable to shake off this vague sense of unease, the secondment began. At first, my ex-husband would come home every weekend. I really feel at ease with Emily's cooking. I made a lot, so don't hold back. I've also prepared lots of make-ahead dishes for you to take back. Thanks for doing this every week. Even though you're busy with work too, Emily. Being on my own, I find it a hassle to cook after returning from work, so my diet is a mess. Making make-ahead dishes for two on the weekends actually helps me out too. Really, thank you. Come on, it's natural for a wife, isn't it? I replied with a shy response to my ex-husband's straightforward words of thanks, thinking these weekends would continue forever. I thought those weekends would continue forever. About a month and a half after the secondment began, my ex-husband's returns home started to decrease. I have to go golfing with some clients this weekend, I'm sorry. I believe it started with something like that. A secondment for creating a big project. Once it fully kicked off, being busy was inevitable. When he did come home, I noticed he was using his phone much more than before. I wondered if his life was okay. Remembering his words that I could come anytime I wanted, as he gave me the spare keys, I drove to his temporary place in northern Pennsylvania one weekend. My ex-husband wasn't home. So, I sent a message saying, "Looks like you're out, I'll wait for you to come back," and used the spare key to enter. As soon as I stepped into the living room from the entrance, I felt something was off. A man's single life room. A sweet scent lingered in the air, where not even an air freshener was placed. It was only a faint remnant of a scent, but it left a strong impression on me. Yet, aside from that, everything seemed unchanged from when he first moved in, not particularly messy despite his busyness. I tossed about 2 days' worth of laundry into the washing machine. The same scent I noticed earlier wafted from one of the shirts. Could it be from a woman at work who wears strong perfume? Could that earlier scent have been from the shirt, too? Thinking such things, I quickly laid out the groceries I had bought in the kitchen and started preparing make-ahead meals. Then, I heard the sound of keys at the entrance. Emily? Are you here? My ex-husband had come back. Finished golfing already? Yeah. We started early in the morning and finished around noon. I see. It would have been nice if you had told me your plans to come over sooner. It was a sudden decision. You said I could come anytime, even if you weren't here, so I thought it might be nice for me to visit sometimes. I did say that, but you surprised me, he said, passing behind me in the kitchen. A sweet scent similar to the one I noticed earlier drifted from him. After that, there were more weekends when my ex-husband didn't come home. So, occasionally, like before, I would go to his temporary place to prepare make-ahead meals. However, after a while, a big project came my way, and with trips and meetings, I hardly had any days off. Even on the days off I did have, I spent them practically comatose, resting. Naturally, visiting my ex-husband's place and even making calls were limited to messages and the occasional video call. Hello? Hey, Emily, sorry. I'm out right now. I'll call you back later. Okay. Even when we connected, the timing was often off, and our conversations didn't last, leading us into a life of complete misalignment. I don't remember how long it had been since we started missing each other, but finally, a weekend came along when I could take a proper break. I decided to visit my ex-husband's temporary place after a long time. On the way, I messaged him that I was coming, but the message remained unread. Arriving at his place, I used my spare key to enter as usual. The moment I stepped into the entrance, that distinct sweet scent was stronger than ever. The room that met my eyes was significantly different from the one I knew. Pink heart-shaped cushions and matching blankets that didn't fit the simple male decor. 2 sets of used dishes left on the table from breakfast. In the bedroom closet, women's clothes were hung openly, and a fluffy loungewear was neatly folded on the bed, as if it belonged there. Confirmed cheating. No matter how I looked at it, it was clear a woman had moved in, making it their cohabitation space. I left the groceries I bought in their bags on the table and sat down on the sofa. How long I waited, I couldn't say. Then, I heard the sound of keys at the entrance. The footsteps and voices of 2 people grew closer and closer. Emily? My ex-husband and his junior, Parker, stood frozen at the entrance to the living room, staring at me. Why are you? I did send a message, you know? Were you too busy being cozy with each other to read it? Cozy with each other? The reason you couldn't come home wasn't golf or work, but because you were making time for your lover. Emily? It turned out just as I feared when you first got assigned. What? When did your affair with her start? You were already visiting here the first time I came, weren't you? Why, how? It's the scent. The sweet scent. I could smell it in the room and on the laundry the first time I came here. I'm sorry. What are you gonna do? What? What do you want to do, Jack? Staying here with her instead of coming home means you've chosen her, right? Emily! Wait a minute! Do you want to be with him enough to make he divorce me, Parker? I'm so sorry. Just wait a moment, Emily. Let me talk to her alone for a bit. What does that mean? If you're saying you're going to her, you two don't need to talk anymore. No, I'm going back to Emily. What? So please let me talk to her. Why can't I speak up more forcefully when I have every right to accuse him? Eventually, I did as my ex-husband asked and gave them time to talk, finding ways to kill time outside. How long did I wander around in this unfamiliar place? When I sighed deeply, a message from my ex-husband popped up on my phone. Did you finish talking? Yeah, her stuff is already gone. That means you're ending that relationship, right? It couldn't go on forever. I was out of my mind. Emily, I'm sorry. To be honest, I couldn't believe it. How could I easily trust and forgive the words of an ex-husband who had betrayed me for so long? I'll talk to the company about coming back from the secondment. What? I can't trust you, Jack. As long as I can't see what you are doing, Parker could easily come back here, right? And you came here for work, right? This place is rented with company expenses. Having an affair in a company's place is a serious compliance violation for both of you. I'm sorry, but I have to report this to the company. Emily, you're gonna report me to the company? Jack, are you really sorry? If you were, you wouldn't say something like that, right? I'm sorry. Do you understand how embarrassing it is for me, being a Miller, to report my own husband's compliance violation to the company? Really? I'm sorry. True to my word, my ex-husband's secondment was soon concluded. I decided to report the situation only to my brother, who is the CEO, and from there, a directive was issued through HR. Though it caused some inconvenience to the other party, they were understanding once it was explained that his workload at the headquarters had increased. After the secondment ended, Parker took a leave of absence. Although it was due to her health issues, the real reason was unclear. However, not having to see either of them at the company anymore was honestly a relief for me. Back to living together as a couple. My ex-husband seemed to have genuinely reflected on his actions this time and made an effort to prioritize our time together since returning. Despite my busy schedule with business trips and tasks, I made sure we spent as much quality time together as possible. By the way, how much do we have in our savings now? It's been growing nicely, hasn't it? Yeah, thanks to you being so diligent every month, it's accumulating well. Sorry that my salary is not as high. That doesn't matter at all. It's about each of us doing what we can, right? Yeah, thanks. We've had a joint savings account since our marriage. It was for various future plans like buying a house or having children. Since we each managed our own salaries, we set up dedicated accounts for expenses and savings, with each of us contributing a predetermined amount. I handled the expenses account, while my ex-husband was in charge of the savings account. It's been 2 years. We must have saved quite a bit, right? Yeah. Maybe it's time to start looking for a house? What? I'm not sure if we should go for a condo or a standalone house, or even buy land, but I thought it might be good to start researching. That's very you, Emily. Because I'm really looking forward to it. People often say that changing your home can change your luck. With that thought, whenever I had time, I would search for real estate online or visit places that caught my eye to walk around. That day, with my ex-husband away on a business trip and having some time to myself, I was walking through a certain town. Then, I recognized a familiar figure ahead. Next to him was a woman I never wanted to see again, seemingly there as a matter of course. Liar. The way they were walking together, hand in hand, clearly didn't seem like a chance encounter. It openly declared the nature of their relationship. And then, her belly is big. The woman's belly was rounded as if she was cradling someone important inside, and the man occasionally looked at her large belly with a fond gaze. So that's what it is. I became oddly calm and secretly followed the two of them. They entered a corporate building. The next day, after returning to my parents' house. It was Monday, and since I had been on a business trip over the weekend, I had the day off in lieu. I made dinner for my parents for the first time in a while and was enjoying coffee after the meal. The doorbell rang insistently, almost like a rapid succession of chimes, echoing throughout the house. Who is it? I went to check, and there was my ex-husband's figure. What's he doing here at this point? Let's send him away. No, Mom, Dad, it's okay. I'll handle this. Ignoring my parents' protests, I headed to the front door. As I opened the door, there was my ex-husband, staring at me from beyond the gate. Emily, please let me talk. Emily! He kept calling my name desperately. I couldn't help but smile slightly. What? What's going on? Showing up at the house of the woman you kicked out as if nothing happened. How can you dare to visit me again after shelving what you've done? Well, I have nothing more to say to you. But I do. Why can't I use the house key anymore? Emily, do you know something about this? Oh, let me guess. You came back from work, tried to use your key, and it didn't work, so you came to ask me? Because when I text you, it doesn't even show as read. That's because I blocked you.
Why?
Because we're divorced now, and there's no reason for us to interact. By the way, I changed the locks. It would be problematic if strangers just walked in, right?
Stranger? I live there, you know.
What? Why are you assuming you can continue living in that house on your own?
Huh?
That house is in my name, you know.
Oh.
Someone got the wrong idea telling me to pack your stuff and leave. Wonder what he was thinking. I couldn't help but smirk down at my ex-husband. Seeing him visibly unsettled made my grin even wider.
But if you do that, what about my place?
What? There's Parker's place, isn't it? The client's company housing, right? I've sent your stuff there?
What?
You've been practically living there since you came back, haven't you? Went home as if it was the most natural thing in the world, with your pregnant girlfriend.
When did you?
Saw you when I was house hunting.
What?
You remember we talked about starting to look for a place, right? Yeah. Since then, whenever I had some free time, I'd go look at houses or plots of land that caught my eye. One of them was in that area, and just by chance, I saw you two arm in arm. Curious, I followed you and saw you enter the client's company housing. They even had a sign out front, which was really helpful. He must know what I'm about to say next. With a tense expression, he waits for my next words. Just as his expression anticipated, I delivered my words. That client, Parker found them, didn't she?
Huh?
She found that client, and that led to your secondment. But, you know, I felt something was off from the start. A company in northern Pennsylvania that nobody knows about. It's extremely unlikely for a girl, just 2 years in and who hasn't even gone on sales calls alone, to find it. So, what's the truth? It's actually your friend's company, isn't it? My ex-husband turned pale all at once. To him, I decided to share everything I knew, one detail after another. Just before the secondment, Parker, who had just started her second year, was assigned to your sales team. You two began working together more often, sometimes with her supporting your clients. As you guys spent time together, your relationship turned romantic. The idea of wanting more time together led to the plan for a joint secondment. But a secondment wouldn't just conveniently happen, so the only option was to create an opportunity for it. With that in mind, you consulted a friend running a company in northern Pennsylvania and secured a promise. Thinking it would be easier to handle if it wasn't known that he and the client were connected, you decided Parker would find the client, with your support. Plus, with a new client in an unknown region, manipulating some information wouldn't likely be exposed. And since it was a friend's company, they'd be willing to cooperate as needed. As an excellent salesperson, your desire to secure a big new project while mentoring a colleague would be seen positively by the company, making the story more plausible. Jack, you used that to your advantage, didn't you? Looking at my ex-husband, he was so hit by the accuracy of my statement that he was speechless, his hands clenched so tightly they turned white, his body stiffened. The reality of the work at the secondment location was, well, pretty bad, wasn't it? Because it was your friend's company, you hardly went to work, and when you did, you played a supportive role in a project that the client was already expanding. In return for providing you with a space for your affair, you let your friend use the prestigious Miller name to smooth over his company's sales operations. The work you went to do in northern Pennsylvania was essentially about maintaining your affair and leveraging the Miller name for networking and entertaining, wasn't it? After I laid it all out, my ex-husband, who had been stiff, completely deflated and murmured quietly, "How did you know all that?" His words summed up all of his feelings. I'm part of the Miller family, you know? If I decide to look into something, I can use whatever means necessary to do so. That your friend's company set up a new branch and company housing a year ago on your recommendation was easy to find out. Your friend was grateful for the support in expanding his business, but you... Well, you conveniently expanded your friend's company for your own future use, didn't you?
So what if I did? He was happy his company grew. It's a win-win, isn't it?
In a way, yes. But you fulfilled your desires by putting the burden on others without shouldering any yourself. There's no other word for it but cunning.
I've just been smart about living my life. I shouldn't be criticized for being cunning.
His demeanor changed completely now that the hidden truth was out. Defiant and brash, his words were sharp.
Well, maybe it doesn't matter. After all, it was a mutual interest, as long as it doesn't bother anyone else, that is. What? What you two did ended up being punished as a compliance violation at Miller, right? Knowing that, you continued your relationship. Is that a correct interpretation? That is. Parker's leave wasn't due to illness, but because of a pregnancy from the affair. And you're still continuing that relationship, causing trouble even to the client. How do you plan to take responsibility for that? That's why I got divorced. Divorce is a matter between us as a couple. The responsibility taken by divorcing is towards me. But how about the responsibility for the scandal at work? Look, whether I have an affair or forcefully take a secondment, it doesn't trouble the company. What? Internal affairs like affairs disrupt the order and affect others to some extent. If people are out on secondment or leave, naturally, the workload shifts to others, causing stress. You don't know the situation while you are away, that's why you can say such things. What? No one complained to me, so there wasn't a problem, right? People didn't say it to you not because they could, but because they couldn't. A talented salesperson and the husband of a Miller daughter. I didn't know, but it turns out you've been leveraging the Miller name internally and externally, haven't you? I was told by a colleague that I was being deceived. Jack, you took advantage of me when I was broken over my ex. You thought it was your chance and bragged to your colleagues? If I say I've always loved her, she'll definitely fall for it now, you bet, didn't you? Must have been fun, having the naive heiress fall so easily.
My voice trembled with anger. Hearing this truth from a colleague after finding out about Jack and Parker's relationship cut me deeper and darkened everything before me. The time when you, Emily, were falling apart, I couldn't bring myself to say anything that would hit you even harder, said the colleague in tears, who bore no guilt. It was me who couldn't hear the words of those around me, who had shut down my heart. I have to take responsibility for the path I've chosen. To do that, I must ensure this man in front of me faces the tide of regret. You targeted me because you wanted the Miller name and its wealth, didn't you? So what if I did? Isn't it obvious? Having a CEO's daughter as a colleague? Always about work, 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 never marrying. And then, all broken over a man. It was an opportunity too good to miss. I know my way around women. Making you fall for me was too easy, it wasn't fun at all. Not fun to seduce, not fun to date, not fun to marry. So, you set your sights on your favorite young newcomer for some excitement. The reason you didn't break up with me even when you had another woman was because you'd be in trouble without the Miller name and its wealth, right? So what? By the way, the president of that client company was like you, right? Playing along with your games and getting something in return. No offense, but it sounds like something rotten would think up. Your sales skills are just the charm you picked up to seduce women. Did he tell you? Yes. I heard all about how you were rotten during your student days, deceiving numerous girls and using them to make money. So, it made perfect sense that you targeted me for my name and wealth and concocted underhanded schemes to get time with that woman. What? Why did he spill everything? He probably tried to save his own skin. What? You know, that company was secretly working against Miller for the sake of your mutual interests. And the support they were providing was clearly a compliance violation. And it was the president himself, right? If Miller were to take action against them, a company of that size wouldn't stand a chance, would they? Well, that's... So, you can't hide your relationship or the facts from us anymore. We know everything. He probably never expected to be betrayed by his friend. Seriously, my ex-husband muttered, looking down. I continued, twisting the knife further. And what about our joint savings account? What? I did the math. Just from my contributions, $2,000 a month for 2 years, plus bonuses of $6,000 4 times. That adds up to $72,000, right? My $72,000 is still in that account, isn't it?
Well, Guess it's impossible to say it's there, right? Since you've spent it all on another woman. What? You spent it all on her, didn't you? You know, her colleague told it to a colleague of ours, actually, she seems to be having an affair with Jack, and she's been getting him to spend his savings on her. Is he okay? What? Susie did. Yeah, that woman, of all things, was talking about her affair with you to a colleague at work, can you believe it? And she's been getting you to spend the savings on her. I wonder if she knows that's basically embezzlement? Embezzlement! Yeah. You didn't know? It could be considered embezzlement to use shared assets.
Seeing my ex-husband turn pale all at once, with his expressions rapidly changing, was truly comical. I couldn't hold back the laughter I had been suppressing any longer, and it burst out of me, leading me to start laughing loudly as if I was expelling it from deep within my belly. Initially stunned, my ex-husband became infuriated by my laughter. His face turned red, and he started hurling angry words at me. Even that seemed ridiculous, and I managed to calm my laughter, gasping for air.
How rude of you to laugh at someone's face! But it's just too funny. You're all worked up over things you've been doing for years. Look at your face in the mirror. It's so busy with emotions, it's hilarious.
He must have become aware of it after being told so. Biting his lip and with his ears turning red, my ex-husband complained, "Shut up," as he turned away to hide his face.
So, what are you gonna do? What? Just so you know, our lawyers are already on this. Everything I just talked about has been verified through our lawyers. Including compensatory and punitive damages, imagine how much that'll cost. You wouldn't dare claim a division of property in the divorce after committing embezzlement, would you? Get yourself a lawyer, and let's have them talk it out. What do you say?
Biting his lip and pausing to think, my ex-husband suddenly started apologizing.
Emily! I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Let's start over, please.
What?
I still love you the most, Emily. You feel the same, right? That's why you married me after 6 months of dating and even came to get me back from the secondment location, right?
Looking up at me with hopeful eyes. His eyes were filled with an inexplicable expectation, believing that if he said this, I would turn back to him. No way.
What?
I said no.
Why not? You forgave me before.
Our marriage was a mistake.
And who proved that?
You did, Jack.
I've done what I could and took responsibility. Now it's your turn to take responsibility for everything you've caused.
Finally, even my ex-husband seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. The hope in his eyes quickly dimmed and then disappeared entirely. Months have passed since then. I'm still busy with work at the company as usual. If anything has changed, it's that I'm now working surrounded by French. From the window, I can see the Eiffel Tower in the distance. Yes, I'm currently working in Paris.
Why not take this opportunity to try working overseas and start fresh, Emily?
What?
A good colleague of mine runs a consulting firm over here and said they'd love to have my sister join them.
Like a secondment?
Yeah, something like that.
It was a sudden proposal from my brother. Though surprised, I was also grateful. I wanted to change my environment, burdened by the past, and fully commit to what I wanted to do, to find myself again. Months have passed since I gratefully accepted my brother's offer. Unfamiliar industry, unfamiliar language. I've been desperately clinging on, finally starting to feel like I'm getting used to the pace of work here. Of course, a lot of this is thanks to the consideration of the CEO, a friend of my brother. And above all, an unexpected reunion shortly after my arrival has really motivated me. Just as I was thinking it might be time to wrap up for today, turning off my PC and starting to tidy up, a shadow fell beside me.
Are you about to finish?
Yeah, I thought it might be a good time to call it a day. The voice belonged to James, my ex-boyfriend, whom I had parted ways with years ago due to misunderstandings. It turned out James was also finishing up, and he suggested grabbing a meal at a favorite Italian restaurant, where we clinked glasses.
You seem to have gotten quite accustomed to the job. I guess I'm finally catching the rhythm. But I'm still overwhelmed by the lack of vocabulary. There are too many technical terms, and I end up reviewing them daily with my notebook and dictionary. I was the same at first. Your ears and brain will get used to it eventually. You're smart, Emily, you'll be fine. Really? More than that, I'm happy to see you becoming more cheerful day by day. What? Didn't you notice? How were you when you first got here? Well, yeah, a lot has happened. Sorry. If we get down to it, it was somewhat my fault, wasn't it?
Even as I tried to deny it with a no to James's downcast words, the responsible James wasn't convinced and seriously moped.
Listen, the path I chose was my own. Sure, there might have been a catalyst, but what followed was my responsibility. But, honestly, I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you.
I reached out with my glass towards James's, gently clinking them together. Reacting finally to the sound, James offered a small, apologetic smile.
It's really okay now, you know? My ex-husband and his affair partner faced consequences from both the company and society. I settled things through alimony. Coming here was all my decision. Well, meeting you, James, here was unexpected.
It was truly coincidental. Upon my arrival, being introduced to James because there was someone in the company was beyond unexpected. We were both so surprised that we ended up staring at each other in silence. James had come to Paris, left the company he used to work for, and joined this one. It made sense why my brother wouldn't know, but given how we parted, it was incredibly awkward at first. However, once work started, the awkwardness faded due to the overwhelming workload, and soon, interacting with James became natural. I was honestly glad to reunite with Emily. I had regrets about how things ended without even seeing each other's faces.
What?
When I first came here, I was just as desperate as you are now, Emily. Honestly, I think I was in a worse state. I couldn't have imagined laughing over a meal with a colleague a few months into my assignment.
I see, it was like that, huh?
Now, I understand. I hadn't known, or rather, hadn't tried to understand James's struggles. Ultimately, I was too consumed with my own issues to truly see James. This was true for my relationship with my ex-husband as well. Since coming here, I feel like I've finally been able to confront my true self.
I'm sorry. I've always been full of myself.
Long distance was a first for both of us. But I sometimes think, if there was a second time, maybe it would work out.
What?
I'm not thinking about rushing into anything right now, but I do hope that someday we can connect beyond just work again. His gaze, directed straight at me, brought back memories from years ago. The fact that he still harbored such thoughts about someone like me simply warmed my heart.
Thank you.
So?
But, I think I'm not ready for that kind of thing for a while. I don't want to repeat the same mistakes, and I've just started to face myself. There are things I need to do here.
I understand that. That's why I'm not thinking about rushing into anything right now. But just remember, there's someone here who always wants Emily to be happy. Honestly, I'm not in a place where I have the capacity for much else. And somewhere inside, the wounded part of me isn't quite ready to see James in that light again. Yet, his words were comforting, and if there's something destined between us, I suppose it will naturally come to be. And if not, that's also fate. I'll leave it in the hands of fate. Reaching out for what's directly in front of me, struggling with all my might, hoping to someday pull some form of destiny towards me using my own strength.